Welcome back, dear listener, to Sleep Theory TV. Breathe softly. Let the day fall away like sand through your fingers. You are safe here. You are home in this quiet space of imagination. Tonight we travel together through time, not in haste, but slowly, as if walking through a memory so old it hums beneath the skin of the world. Close your eyes, if you wish, or let them rest on some gentle point in your room. Now listen, there is a city by the sea, a city of white stone and wind. You can hear the hush of waves, the whisper of sails, the calls of traders in a dozen tongues. The air smells of salt, of warm bread, and of papyrus drying in the sun. The harbour glitters like molten bronze, under a sky wide and clear. This is Alexandria, the dream of Alexander the Great, shaped by his successors, ruled by the kings who called themselves Ptolemies. It is the beating heart of the ancient world, a meeting place of Africa, Asia, and Europe. It is where East meets West, where ideas cross oceans, and where one astonishing dream takes form. The dream to gather all knowledge under one roof. Imagine that idea, the sheer breathtaking scope of it. Every poem ever sung, every law written on clay, every story told around a fire, every chart of the stars, every question whispered into the dark. All of it gathered, studied, preserved. That was the purpose of the Library of Alexandria. But before we step inside that sanctuary of learning, let us drift back to the beginning, to the seed of the dream. After Alexander's death, his empire stretched wide and wild. Among his generals, a man named Ptolemy took Egypt as his share. He became pharaoh, and with his new kingdom came a vision to make Alexandria not just a city of commerce and conquest, but of knowledge. In the golden heat of the Mediterranean light, Ptolemy and his advisors imagined a place where the wisdom of every nation could be preserved. To do this, they needed not only buildings, but minds, scholars, poets, mathematicians, physicians, and astronomers. The dream began with the Musion, the Temple of the Muses, the 9 sisters of inspiration. The library grew beside it, like a tree beside a temple, its roots in curiosity, its branches reaching toward the heavens. They called it not merely a storehouse, but a living mind. It was said that within its walls one could find the history of the world written on delicate rolls of papyrus. Imagine now the streets of Alexandria in its youth. Marble colonnades, gardens heavy with figs and pomegranates, the sound of sandals on polished stone. The great Pharos lighthouse, one of the wonders of the ancient world, casting its light far across the sea, guiding ships to the harbour like a beacon of knowledge, calling to the distant lands. And in the heart of the city, near the royal palace, stood the library. No one knows precisely how it looked, but in your mind's eye you can see it. A labyrinth of cool halls, lined with shelves carved from cedar and oak, scrolls stacked in neat rows, each labelled in elegant Greek script. Light filters through high windows, dust drifting like golden mist. Somewhere a scholar's stylus scratches faintly. A student whispers a question. The sound is gentle, reverent, as if words themselves are sacred here. Everywhere there is the scent of papyrus and ink. Oil lamps flicker. their flames bending in the soft drafts from open courtyards. The air feels alive. Within these walls lived men of astonishing mind. Philosophers, poets, scientists. Some lived in simple rooms attached to the library itself. They ate together, debated, taught, and dreamed together. Their lives were dedicated to learning, to observing, and to questioning everything that could be known. One of them was Zenodotus of Ephesus, the first known head librarian. He began the colossal task of cataloguing the library's collection and editing the ancient texts, especially the works of Homer, whose verses had already echoed through centuries. Zenodotus believed that preserving a text was not enough. One must understand it, correct it, and ensure its purity. Another was Callimachus of Cyrene, a poet and scholar who created the Pinnaces, the first great library catalogue in history. Imagine that, dear listener, the earliest attempt to organize human knowledge. Callimachus listed authors, subjects, summaries, and scroll titles. A map of the mind of the library. His system would echo through time, influencing how libraries would be arranged for millennia. And then there was Eratosthenes, the man who measured the earth. He noticed that at noon on the summer solstice, in the city of Siena, the sun shone directly down a well, no shadow at all. But in Alexandria, at the same moment, a shadow fell. From the difference, he calculated the earth's circumference, astonishingly close to what we know today. He did this not in a lab, but in the quiet of the library, with a reed pen, a scroll, and a deep faith that the universe could be understood through thought and reason. Imagine that moment, the candlelight flickering, the sound of waves faintly reaching through open doors, and a man bending over parchment, drawing lines that would map the very curve of the planet. The library's ambition was as vast as the sky. The Ptolemaic kings ordered that every ship entering Alexandria's harbour must surrender any written works it carried, scrolls, manuscripts, letters, or books. The library's scribes would copy them. The originals would stay in Alexandria. The copies would return to the owners. Imagine the accumulation, day after day, year after year. Scrolls arriving from Athens, from Babylon, from India, from Carthage, from lands now forgotten. Languages from every corner of the known world filled the shelves. Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Hebrew, Sanskrit at inside. Translators worked side by side, turning ancient wisdom into Greek, so that scholars could read and compare. They translated the Hebrew Torah, creating the Septuagint, a bridge between cultures and faiths. They studied the medical texts of Egypt, the mathematics of Babylon, the philosophy of Greece, and the astronomy of distant Chaldea. Every scroll added to the library was another voice joining the eternal conversation of the human mind. The library was more than a building. It was an organism, alive and breathing. Scholars debated through the nights, sometimes fiercely, but always with reverence for truth. They studied the movement of the stars, the geometry of shapes, the pulse of the body, the music of poetry. There were physicians who learned the workings of muscles and veins, astronomers who charted the heavens and proposed that the earth was a sphere turning beneath the sun, poets who refined language until it could carry both reason and wonder. They called this unity philosophia the love of wisdom. The library was their sanctuary, the idea that knowledge could be infinite, that truth could be approached through learning and dialogue, made Alexandria not just a city of trade, but a city of mind. Every day, scrolls were read, discussed and copied by careful hands. Ideas leapt from one language to another, one era to another, one heart to another. It was a golden age. And yet, like all golden things, it could not last forever. Papyrus is delicate, dear listener. It curls and cracks in damp air. It burns quickly, its ashes rising like tiny birds. And yet this fragile material carried the weight of civilizations. The scholars of Alexandria knew this. They worked constantly to preserve and copy their texts. But no matter how careful the hands, time always wins. Still, the greater danger was not time, but people, politics, conquest, the restless shifting of empires. For centuries, Alexandria remained a jewel, a city of scholars, merchants, and dreamers. But history is never still. Wars came and went, and with them fires and losses that would slowly unravel what had been gathered. But we will not rush to that sorrow yet. First, let us linger a little longer in the brightness. Imagine walking through the library at its height. You pass a courtyard where mathematicians are drawing circles in the sand. You hear the quiet chant of philosophers reading aloud in measured tones. You see scribes dipping their brushes into ink made from soot and honey, copying lines so that one voice might live forever. In one corner, a teacher explains the motion of the stars, drawing them on a bronze plate, mapping constellations that still shine above us tonight. In another, a poet recites new verses, her voice soft, the rhythm like waves. The library hums like a beehive, each cell filled with the nectar of human thought. Here, the line between science and art, philosophy and poetry, dissolves. To study the universe is to praise it. To read is to worship. To write is to remember. Every breath of wind that passes through the columns carries whispers. Fragments of Euclid's Elements, Aristotle's logic, Herophilus's studies of the heart, and Sappho's poems of love. Every whisper is an echo of the same question. What does it mean to know? As the day fades, lamps are lit one by one. The marble halls glow golden. Outside, the sea murmurs. A student lingers, reading by lamplight, the words of a philosopher long gone. In that moment, time folds inward. The student, the scroll, and the ancient writer become one. Three minds connected by a line of ink. That is the quiet miracle of knowledge. And that was the miracle of Alexandria. Even now, when we close our eyes and think of lost wisdom, it is the library we imagine, its endless shelves, its flame, its silence. We imagine what might have been saved, what secrets might have survived. The missing plays of Sophocles, the forgotten histories of Egypt, the songs of vanished poets, the lost books of geometry, astronomy, and medicine. The library is gone, but the dream remains. Its spirit lingers in every library that followed, in every scholar who reads by candlelight, in every question whispered into the quiet of the night. And tonight, as you listen, you too are part of that same lineage. the eternal conversation between curiosity and wonder. You, too, are walking the colonnades of Alexandria. And the scroll you hold, dear listener, is the world itself. The sea is still breathing against the stone walls of Alexandria. The moonlight drapes itself softly over the marble rooftops, spilling silver across the courtyards. Somewhere a candle trembles. Somewhere else the echo of sandals fades into a long, warm silence. The library sleeps, but even in its sleep, it dreams. It dreams of questions yet unanswered, of voices yet to be heard. You are there again, walking through the halls. The air is cool, fragrant with oil and dust. A gentle hush surrounds you. A silence not of emptiness, but of listening. The silence of thousands of words waiting to be read. Each scroll is a breath, each line a heartbeat. Together they form the pulse of the world. Tonight, we walk deeper into that pulse. We will meet the minds who kept the light alive. The scholars, philosophers, astronomers, and poets who made the library more than a building. They made it a living soul. The library's golden age unfolded across centuries. Under the protection of the early Ptolemies, the Mausion flourished, not a mere building, but an entire community devoted to learning. It was a place of residence, teaching, research, and quiet devotion to thought. There were gardens and lecture halls, observatories and dining rooms. Scholars ate together, debated at length, and dedicated their lives to inquiry. They were not priests, though the building was sacred. Not politicians, though kings consulted them. They were seekers. In this city by the sea, curiosity itself became a religion. Listen now to the scratching of a reed pen on papyrus. In a small study lined with scrolls, a man bends over a table. His name is Callimachus of Cyrene, and he is both poet and librarian, the voice who first tried to name everything humanity knew. He does not write poems of heroes and gods. Instead, he writes of order, the invisible art of arrangement. He creates the Pinnaces, a vast catalogue of the library's contents. Over 120 scrolls long, it lists authors, works and subjects, a guide through the labyrinth of knowledge. It is the first great library catalogue, the ancestor of every index and database we know today. Callimachus believed that understanding the world required more than passion. It required patience, the art of connection, the ability to see how one idea touches another. His poetry reflects that same care. He once wrote that a big book was a big evil, not in size, but in excess. He loved precision, clarity, and the quiet power of detail. In his mind, the library was a living poem, and every shelf was a stanza. Now, in another hall, a tall man leans over a long, polished table. The light from a nearby window falls across a parchment filled with lines, circles, and careful numbers. His name is Eratosthenes, and he has been called the Beta of the world. Second to none, but not the first in anything, they said. Yet time would prove how wrong they were. Eratosthenes was a geographer, astronomer, mathematician, and poet. He carried within him the essence of the library's spirit, a mind that saw unity in all things, He studied the sun. He studied shadows. He measured, compared, and wondered. In the city of Siene, now called Aswan, he heard of a well where, on the summer solstice, the sun cast no shadow. At that same hour in Alexandria, a column still had a shadow. From this simple difference, he imagined something extraordinary, that the earth curved, using the distance between the two cities and the angle of the shadow. He calculated the circumference of the planet with remarkable accuracy. He had never seen the world in full, yet he understood its shape. In a time when myth and superstition clouded the sky, Eratosthenes measured it. He was also the first to draw a map with parallel lines of latitude and longitude, a grid upon which the earth could be known. And perhaps, late at night, when the lamps burned low, he would look out at the stars and smile at the strange truth that from this small city by the sea, humanity had touched the infinite. Before Eratosthenes, there was Zenodotus, the first head librarian of Alexandria. His work was less visible than maps or measurements, but no less profound. Zenodotus loved words. He believed that to preserve knowledge was to protect the voice of those who came before. His task was immense: to organize and correct the countless scrolls brought to the library from every corner of the world. Imagine him sitting among towers of papyrus, reading Homer's verses by lamplight, comparing one copy to another, marking discrepancies in the margins. He was the first known literary critic. His careful corrections would shape the very form of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, determining how they would be read for thousands of years. Every line he touched carried forward a legacy that would ripple through ages. In his devotion to language, Zenodotus gave humanity a gift greater than treasure. He gave it clarity. A hush falls as we step into another chamber. Here, on a smooth stone floor, a teacher draws figures with a stylus dipped in fine sand. Circles, triangles, lines that meet at perfect angles. His students sit cross-legged around him, their eyes bright. This is Euclid, the father of geometry. His teachings would shape mathematics for more than 2 millennia. In his masterpiece, The Elements, Euclid gathered the known knowledge of geometry into a single elegant structure. From a few simple axioms, he built an entire universe of shapes, order, and logic. He taught that truth could be built step by step, that from clarity comes certainty. His methods influenced architects, astronomers, and even philosophers. He did not work for glory. He worked for beauty, the quiet, perfect beauty of reason. When a student once asked him what reward he might receive from studying geometry, Euclid replied gently, "For that, there is the knowledge itself." His words still echo in the halls of learning today. Now we move to the library's medical quarters, where the air smells faintly of herbs and oil. Here, the scholars study the mysteries of the human body. Herophilus of Chalcedon was one of the first anatomists to dissect and record the inner workings of the body. He studied the pulse, the nerves, the brain, discovering that it was the brain, not the heart, that governed thought and sensation. He described the structure of the eyes, the liver, the intestines. His writings formed the foundation of medical study for centuries to come. And yet, even he saw medicine not merely as science, but as philosophy, a way of understanding the harmony of life. Under his gentle hands, the library became not just a temple of words, but of healing. Knowledge, after all, was medicine for the mind. High above the courtyards, in a small observatory open to the night, a man watches the heavens. He traces the paths of the planets, the movement of the moon. He is Aristarchus of Samos, and his thoughts are bold beyond his time. He dares to suggest that the Earth moves around the Sun, not the other way around. In his quiet observations, he glimpses what others will not fully accept for nearly 2,000 years. He imagines a vast cosmos, with the sun at its heart and the stars as distant suns of their own. He writes his findings on papyrus that may never have survived. But his idea does. It floats, patient and unseen, through the centuries, waiting to be rediscovered. Above him, the stars shimmer like pages unwritten. He closes his eyes, and for a moment he feels the turning of the earth beneath his feet. All around the library, such minds lived and worked. There was no boundary between art and science, philosophy and faith. To measure the heavens was to write a poem. To study the body was to honor the gods. Each discovery was shared. Scholars debated one another not to conquer, but to understand. They wrote letters across borders, across languages, across centuries. The library became a symphony. Every voice a note, every idea a melody, and together they played the music of reason. Imagine walking those marble halls at twilight. The lamps glow softly. The scholars' voices blend into a murmur, a living hum of learning. You pass the mathematicians at their tables, the poets reciting verses in the garden, the translators bent over ancient scripts. Every corridor leads to curiosity. Every doorway opens onto wonder. You are standing inside the beating heart of civilization. Beyond its walls, the library's influence spread like sunlight. Students traveled from distant lands to study in Alexandria. They came from Greece, Persia, Judea, India, and Carthage. They carried home new knowledge, charts of stars, theories of medicine, inventions, philosophies, and they built their own centers of learning, inspired by what they had seen. The library became the axis of an invisible network, an ancient internet of minds, and yet it was still a fragile dream. For all its greatness, it existed in a world ruled by kings and empires, where power could shift with the tide. Still, for these centuries of light, it glowed. At its core, the library was not about possession. It was about understanding. The scholars who walked its halls were not hoarders of texts, but guardians of questions. They knew that to seek truth was to accept uncertainty. Every scroll was an invitation to doubt, to wonder, to ask again. And so, as the waves struck the harbour and the stars turned above the Pharaoh's lighthouse, the scholars of Alexandria continued their patient work. They copied, they studied, they taught. Sometimes they disagreed fiercely. Sometimes they failed. But always they returned to the same belief, that knowledge, though fragile, was the most enduring gift humanity could give itself. Imagine now, dear listener, one of those nights. The city has gone quiet. The wind moves softly through the columns. The sea murmurs its endless lullaby. In one of the great halls, a few scholars still remain, writing by the light of small flames. One of them pauses, stretching his hand. Another reads aloud a fragment of verse. A third listens, nods, and adds a thought. They are tired but happy, not from accomplishment, but from the simple act of being part of something greater than themselves. They know that they are caretakers of the world's memory. They do not seek fame, they seek continuity, and in that quiet, surrounded by scrolls and shadows, the library breathes. The lamps burn low. The air hums with soft wisdom. It is a peace that feels eternal. The Library of Alexandria, in this golden moment, stands not only as a monument of human thought, but as a mirror of human nature itself. Our hunger to know, our need to connect, our wish to understand the vast mystery of being alive. And though centuries will pass, and flames will one day touch its walls, that hunger, that need, that wish, they will never be lost, because you, dear listener, are still listening. And so, in a way, the library still lives. The sea wind shifts. The air in Alexandria grows heavier, tinged with salt and smoke. The quiet hum of thought that once filled the halls begins to falter. Shadows lengthen across marble floors, once alive with scholars' footsteps. The library still stands, proud and radiant, but the world beyond its walls is changing. Empires rise and fall. Kings grow restless. The gentle voice of knowledge begins to compete with the louder voice of power. It begins not with fire, but with fear. The Library of Alexandria was born in an age of curiosity, but it lived in an age of empire. For centuries, it survived under the care of the Ptolemies, those successors of Alexander who ruled Egypt from their shining capital. Yet, as generations passed, the harmony that once nourished the library began to crack. The later Ptolemies became more consumed with power than wisdom. Court intrigue, jealousy, and political ambition seeped through the palace walls. Rival factions rose, each seeking control over the same fragile dream, the dream of knowledge. Scrolls continued to arrive from distant lands, yet their arrival was tinged with anxiety. The scholars still taught, but their voices were often drowned by the clamour of soldiers in the streets. The light of reason burned steadily, but the world around it had grown darker. The library's fate became tied to the fate of Egypt itself, and Egypt, once the beating heart of learning, found itself in the shadow of Rome. The Romans admired Greek wisdom, but they valued conquest more. When Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BCE, he brought not scrolls, but legions. He came amid civil war, a war between Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy Thunthult, each claiming the throne. The city trembled, the harbour filled with ships. Soldiers patrolled the streets once lined with scholars. The library, that sacred sanctuary of the mind, found itself caught in the path of politics. When the war reached the docks, Caesar ordered his ships to be set aflame to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. The fire leapt from ship to shore, from shore to warehouse, from warehouse to the quarter of the library itself. No one meant to burn the past. But flame, once freed, does not choose what it consumes. The wind carried embers through the streets. Scrolls, dry and delicate as autumn leaves, caught light. Flames licked the columns and shelves. The papyrus curled and whispered as it burned. No one knows how much was lost that night. Some say only the ship's warehouses burned. Others that the main halls of the library were touched by fire. But all agree that the air was filled with the smell of ink and ash, and that the dawn revealed a silence deeper than before. Where once there had been the murmur of learning, there was only the faint echo of what had been. It is said that when the smoke cleared, thousands upon thousands of scrolls were gone. Works of philosophy, medicine, mathematics, poetry, all vanished into sky and sea. The knowledge of entire civilizations may have perished in a single night, and yet some part of the library survived. Scholars returned. The Mausion still stood. The hunger to learn was not extinguished. In time, the library continued, diminished but alive. But something had changed. The flame that had burned the scrolls also burned into the human heart. A reminder that knowledge, though eternal in essence, lives in fragile vessels. The library was no longer merely a place. It had become a symbol of memory and mortality, of creation and loss. In the centuries that followed, Alexandria rose again. The scholars rebuilt, collected anew, and established what some call the daughter library, housed in the Serapeum, the great temple of Serapis. There, among towering statues and colonnades, the spirit of the library lived on. The Serapeum became a bridge between worlds. Greek philosophy and Egyptian faith, reason and reverence intertwined. The scholars who studied there continued to preserve the wisdom of ages past. They copied manuscripts, translated sacred texts, and sought harmony between science and spirit. But time, once more, would turn against them. As the centuries turned, a new faith began to spread across the world. Christianity. Its message of compassion and divine unity inspired many, but it also challenged the old ways. To some of its early leaders, the temples of Egypt and the writings of pagan philosophers seemed like remnants of a world best left behind. The Serapeum, with its statues and ancient scrolls, became a symbol of that older world. In 391 CE, under the rule of Emperor Theodosius, a decree was issued to close pagan temples. The Serapeum was among them. Crowds gathered. Some came to protect the temple. Others came to destroy it. The air filled with shouting, with fear, with the sound of stone breaking. When the dust settled, the great temple was gone, its statues shattered, its altars overturned. The scrolls it held, the last echoes of the library's collection, disappeared into history. And with that, the last visible light of the Library of Alexandria went dark. What exactly was lost, no one can say. Some believe that the library contained the works of ancient dramatists whose names we no longer know. Others say it held records of forgotten empires, early maps of the stars, treatises on medicine far ahead of their time. Perhaps it held the lost book of Aristotle on comedy, or the missing histories of ancient civilizations beyond Greece and Egypt, maybe even the mysteries of Atlantis, or of lands beyond the known seas. We can only imagine each lost scroll is a silence, a voice that once spoke, now unheard, a question that was once asked, now unanswered. And yet in that silence there is something hauntingly beautiful, for it reminds us that knowledge, like all living things, is mortal, that even wisdom must sometimes die, so that it can be born again. Before the final darkness, there were still voices that refused to fade. One of them was Hypatia, the daughter of the mathematician Theon. She lived in Alexandria in the 4th century, long after the first fires had burned. She taught philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy. Her classroom was the city itself, open, vibrant, alive with dialogue. She was known for her calm wisdom, her luminous mind, and her refusal to bow to the politics of her age. But the city had changed. The same streets that once echoed with scholarly debate now trembled with religious conflict. Hypatia became a target, not for what she did, but for what she represented. The old union of reason and faith, inquiry and tolerance. In 415 CE, she was attacked and killed by a mob. Her death marked the end of the ancient spirit of Alexandria. And yet her name, like the libraries, would live on, a symbol of courage, of the eternal struggle between light and ignorance. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, the library itself was gone. But its memory lingered like perfume on the wind. Travellers spoke of it in hushed tones, the place where all knowledge once lived. Philosophers mourned it as a paradise lost. The poets imagined its halls shimmering in dream, filled with the scent of parchment and oil, the whisper of turning pages. Some said that deep beneath the sands, fragments still remained, scrolls sealed in clay, waiting to be found. Others believed that nothing remained but the idea, and that the idea was enough, for ideas cannot truly die. They sleep, they wait, and sometimes they return, wearing new forms, speaking new tongues, carried by new dreamers. What was destroyed in Alexandria was not only knowledge, it was the memory of how much humanity could know. Imagine, for a moment, if the library had endured. Imagine if its scrolls had survived to be copied in Byzantium, studied in Baghdad, translated in medieval Europe. How different would our world be today? Would we have reached the stars sooner, cured our illnesses earlier, understood the nature of the universe more completely, We cannot know, but we can feel the weight of that unknowing, a quiet ache that lingers at the edge of every discovery we make. The library's ashes live within us as a question that never fades. How much more could we have been? And yet, though the library burned, its spirit was not lost, because knowledge does not belong to any single place. It belongs to the human heart, the same yearning that built the library, that endless, patient hunger to understand, lives on in every book written since, every experiment performed, every child who looks up at the stars and wonders. The flame that consumed the library was not the end of light. It was the scattering of embers, across continents, across centuries, across minds. Each ember took root somewhere new, in the academies of Athens, in the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, in the monasteries of Ireland, in the Renaissance studios of Florence. The dream that began in Alexandria simply changed form. Knowledge cannot be kept in walls. It flows like water. It finds its way. The library may have burned, but its essence became the fire that drives us still. To learn, to question, to seek. And perhaps, somewhere in the vast expanse of human thought, the library still exists, not in marble and papyrus, but in us. In every thought passed from one mind to another. In every spark of curiosity that refuses to die. In the eternal silence that listens, waits and dreams of knowledge yet to come. From the ashes of the library, the world turned quietly onward. The sea still touched the stones of Alexandria, and the wind still carried the scent of salt and history. The city lived on, though the great halls were gone. Ships still came and went from the harbour, bearing merchants, pilgrims, and wanderers. Life continued as it always does, moving gently forward even after fire has fallen. But memory, dear listener, is a strange and stubborn thing. Even when the walls crumble and the books are turned to ash, the memory of what once was lingers in the spaces between breaths. In dreams, in whispers, in longing. The library had vanished, but its story did not end. Its soul had scattered, like pollen on the wind. Not all that was written was lost. Many of the works once held in the library had been copied, traded and translated long before the final flames. Fragments of the library's wisdom found their way into private collections, into temples, into homes of distant scholars who never set foot in Alexandria. From Greece to Syria, from Egypt to Rome, small pieces of the library's great body survived, like shards of a shattered mirror reflecting glimpses of the same light. The philosophers of Athens preserved parts of Plato and Aristotle. The mathematicians of Byzantium safeguarded Euclid's Elements. Physicians across the Mediterranean carried forward the teachings of Herophilus and Galen. Each saved text was a small defiance against oblivion, a voice refusing to go silent, and though the world had changed, that quiet defiance would one day blossom again. Centuries after the fires, far to the north and east, another city rose as a guardian of learning. Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. In its monasteries and scriptoria, scribes bent over desks of polished wood, copying ancient texts by the light of flickering lamps. The walls around them were thick stone, silent except for the scratching of pens against parchment. They copied not only the words of saints and theologians, but also those of philosophers, astronomers, and mathematicians whose works had once filled the shelves of the library. They understood that to preserve the past was to protect the soul of civilization. And so, in those quiet rooms overlooking the Bosporus, the ghost of the Library of Alexandria breathed again, not in grand marble halls, but in the soft rhythm of ink and patience. The scribes worked for centuries, line by line, word by word, saving knowledge from the slow erosion of time. They could not rebuild the library, but they could keep its light from going out entirely. Farther east, in the heart of Baghdad, another light began to glow. In the 8th century, during the Abbasid Caliphate, a great center of learning was founded, Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. It was, in spirit, the heir to Alexandria. There, scholars from across the known world gathered to study, translate, and expand upon the wisdom of the ancients. Greek, Persian, Indian, and Egyptian texts were rendered into Arabic. Astronomy, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, all flourished once more. The scholars of Baghdad saw knowledge as sacred. They believed that to seek understanding was to honor creation itself. In that golden age of Islam, the lost spark of Alexandria blazed anew. Figures like Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Avicenna, and Al-Hazan built upon the works of their Greek predecessors, refining and expanding them. They did not merely preserve, they evolved. They invented algebra, refined optics, explored chemistry, and charted the heavens with new precision. And when they spoke of learning, they spoke as the Alexandrians once did, with reverence, with curiosity, with the belief that truth transcends borders and faiths. The House of Wisdom became what the library had been, a sanctuary of the mind, and in its lamps one could almost imagine the same ancient flame that once burned by the Nile. Through the centuries that followed, the wisdom preserved and reborn in Baghdad spread outward again, carried by travelers, merchants and wanderers across deserts and seas. In time, these ideas reached Moorish Spain, where cities like Cordoba and Toledo became centers of translation and study. There, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scholars worked side by side to translate Arabic and Greek texts into Latin. It was in those halls that Europe would rediscover the lost knowledge of the ancients. The mathematics of Pythagoras, the geometry of Euclid, the philosophy of Aristotle, the medicine of Galen. The embers had crossed continents. The library, though long gone, was alive in motion, reborn wherever human hands sought to copy, teach and learn, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the world began to awaken once more. By the 15th century, Europe had begun to stir from the long sleep of the Middle Ages. The rediscovered texts of antiquity flowed like clear water through the parched fields of the human mind. Artists, scientists and philosophers looked again to the world with wonder. They studied anatomy as Herophilus once had, mapped the heavens as Eratosthenes and Aristarchus once dreamed, and sought harmony in numbers and nature. Leonardo da Vinci drew the human body with the precision of a Greek physician. Copernicus read of heliocentric ideas that echoed those of Aristarchus. Newton built upon geometry first written in Alexandria 2,000 years before. And through it all, the shadow of the library lingered, not as a wound, but as a ghostly teacher. Every discovery whispered, "We remember." Every question asked, "What was lost?" And every answer found was, in some way, an act of resurrection. In the centuries that followed, the dream of a universal library, a place where all knowledge could be gathered and shared, reappeared again and again. The great universities of the modern world were built in that same spirit. The collections of the British Museum, the Vatican Library, and the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris all carried echoes of Alexandria. And later still, as printing spread and books became countless, the dream evolved into something vast and invisible. The global web of thought, a network connecting minds across distance and time. The Library of Alexandria was no longer a place of stone and scrolls. It had become an idea that could live anywhere, even here, now. As these words flow into your mind, that same current continues. The quiet, ceaseless movement of curiosity from one soul to another. The library never truly died. It simply changed form. In modern times, near the same shore where the ancient library once stood, a new building rises from the sunlight, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. It opened in 2002, a tribute to the dream that never faded. Its architecture is circular, a great tilted disc of stone and glass symbolizing the sun, the light of knowledge. Inside, millions of books rest beneath a ceiling of open skylights. The air hums with quiet purpose. The echo of the old dream made real once more. Scholars and students from around the world come to study there, just as they once did 2,000 years ago. The new library stands not as a replacement, but as a continuation, a whisper from the past that says, "Begin again," in its design, in its purpose, in its soul. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina carries the pulse of the Ancient One. The same light, reborn through time. Knowledge, like flame, cannot be owned. It must be shared to live. The Library of Alexandria teaches us that wisdom is both fragile and eternal, easily destroyed, yet endlessly reborn through the human desire to understand. Every age has its own library, in the parchment of monks, in the scrolls of scholars, in the circuits of machines. And each time knowledge is lost, it is found again because somewhere someone remembers, someone listens, someone writes. The ancient scholars could not have imagined what their dream would become. That one day, the entire world would be connected by invisible threads of information, that words would travel across oceans in moments, that the pursuit of learning would circle the earth itself. And yet, if they could see it, they would recognize the spirit. The same curiosity that led Eratosthenes to measure the earth, the same love of order that drove Callimachus to catalogue the world, the same devotion to truth that lit the lamps of Alexandria. It lives in every search for understanding today. We are all heirs of the library. We carry it within us. Every question we ask is another shelf rebuilt, Every discovery, another scroll restored. The library breathes again each time knowledge is shared freely, each time wisdom is offered without fear, each time truth is pursued for its own quiet beauty. If you close your eyes now, you might almost see it, the marble floors gleaming under lantern light, the scent of parchment, oil and salt air, the soft murmur of scholars deep in thought. Somewhere, a mathematician draws a line in the sand. Somewhere, a philosopher reads aloud a verse. Somewhere, a scribe whispers a prayer of thanks for words that endure. And somewhere, beyond the veil of time, the library stands whole again. Not in brick or stone, but in the endless continuity of human thought. The flame still burns. The scrolls are infinite. The learning never ends. The Library of Alexandria lives not in the past, but in every moment we choose to remember, to imagine, to learn. Its true walls are made of wonder, and wonder can never burn. The Library of Alexandria no longer exists in stone or scroll, yet its shadow stretches farther than any monument ever built. It lingers in imagination. It drifts through history like a soft echo, reappearing wherever humanity dreams of knowing everything. The library has become more than a memory. It has become a myth, and like all great myths, its truth lives not in the details of what happened, but in what it means. When we speak of the Library of Alexandria, we are not merely describing a building. We are describing an idea so vast that it transcends its walls. The myth of the library began almost as soon as it was lost. Ancient writers could not agree on how it fell, or even when. Some said it burned in Caesar's war. Others blamed the Christians, or the Arabs, or time itself. Each generation retold the story differently, reshaping it to mirror their fears and hopes. Over the centuries, the library became a symbol of the unattainable, a reminder of the fragility of knowledge and the arrogance of forgetting. It became the stage upon which humanity projected its own longing for wisdom and its guilt for losing it. Perhaps that is why the legend endures, because we see ourselves in its fire. There is a fire that consumes paper, and a fire that consumes memory. The first burns quickly, the second burns forever. In the story of Alexandria, both flames meet. The ancient fire, whether it came from Caesar's ships, from zealots in temples, or from the slow decay of time, may have been brief, but its echoes spread through centuries. Every lost manuscript, every vanished civilization, every forgotten name calls back to that same flame. When a library burns, it is not only paper that turns to smoke. It is the laughter of poets, the equations of dreamers, the quiet thoughts of those who believed that words could defy death. And yet, that fire is also a kind of rebirth, because when knowledge vanishes, it compels us to seek it again. It teaches us that memory must be tended, like a lamp in the wind. The myth of Alexandria is not a story of destruction. It is a story of continuity through loss. People still wonder what truly lay within the library's walls. Historians can only guess. Perhaps it held the plays of Aeschylus that never reached our time. Perhaps the lost comedies of Aristotle, the final dialogues of Plato, the forgotten epics of ancient Persia. Maybe it held records of civilizations we no longer remember. Merchants who crossed oceans long before the age of sails, scientists who measured the stars with forgotten tools, healers who wrote of plants that no longer exist. Some even imagine that it held the secrets of lost continents, the keys to understanding Atlantis, or knowledge from lands beyond the edge of the ancient maps. Such ideas are half history, half dream, but that is the nature of mystery. It leaves space for imagination to grow. The library has become a vessel for that imagination. In its imagined shelves, we place everything humanity might have known, everything it still hopes to find. Archaeologists still walk the sands of Alexandria, searching for traces. Beneath modern streets, fragments of columns lie buried, silent witnesses to a vanished age. In 2004, beneath the remains of the ancient city, stone chambers were found. Rooms once filled with scrolls and scholars. The discoveries were small, yet the emotion they stirred was vast. For centuries, people had wondered whether anything of the library still lay waiting beneath the dust. And there, beneath layers of earth and time, were whispers of it. Walls that had felt the echo of footsteps, thresholds that once opened into wonder. The earth keeps its secrets well, but even if the library's body is gone, its ghost has never left the shore. The waves still touch the place where scholars once walked, and sometimes the wind off the sea still sounds like the rustle of papyrus. Why does this place haunt us so deeply? Perhaps because the library is a mirror. It reflects back to us our greatest strength, the ability to gather, to learn, to question, and it reflects our greatest weakness, the tendency to destroy what we do not understand. The story of the library is not only about the past, it is about the present, about how we treat knowledge now, how we preserve it, how we lose it again and again. Every time truth is silenced, every time learning is dismissed, every time fear triumphs over curiosity, a small piece of Alexandria burns anew. But every time someone opens a book, teaches another person, asks a question, or preserves an idea for the future, a small part of it is rebuilt. The library is both wound and healing. It is both the fire and the light that survives it. Long after the scrolls turned to ash, their ideas travelled on, not in paper, but in people. The scholars who fled the fall of Alexandria carried fragments of its knowledge to other lands. Some went north to Athens, others east to Antioch, or across the desert to Persia. They brought with them memories, not entire texts, but summaries, paraphrases, ideas. The library lived within their minds. Each teacher who spoke of what they once read became a new vessel for its wisdom. Each student who listened became another spark of the same flame. The knowledge of the library did not die in a single night. It drifted through generations like pollen on the wind, invisible yet alive. We are all descendants of that drift. When you read, when you learn, when you share, you are part of that same lineage of remembering. Even as the library fell, Other centers of learning rose: Athens, Rome, Baghdad, Nalanda, Timbuktu, Chang'an. Each one, knowingly or not, carried a part of Alexandria's legacy. Each believed in its own way that to seek knowledge was to honor the divine. In India, scholars at Nalanda University preserved and taught mathematics and astronomy, while the library's ashes cooled by the Nile. In China, scrolls of bamboo recorded histories and sciences with the same devotion. In Africa, the scholars of Timbuktu would one day create libraries of their own, filled with works of poetry, law, and medicine. The dream of Alexandria was never confined to one place. It was a spark that leapt from culture to culture, igniting wherever minds turned toward truth. Even now, that spark moves, not in marble halls, but in the circuits of digital networks, in the voices of teachers, in the libraries of every city and small town. It has become the pulse of civilization itself. The loss of the library is not simply a story about fire. It is a meditation on impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Not empires, not buildings, not even the words written to outlive them. But in their passing, they teach us something essential. That meaning does not depend on permanence. The beauty of knowledge lies in its movement, its ability to pass from one form to another, to transform as it travels. The Library of Alexandria did not fail because it burned. It succeeded because its spirit proved unkillable. Shudam, idea that all knowledge belongs together. That there are no borders in the realm of understanding has survived every flame, and that idea is the truest form of immortality. When people dream of the library, they are dreaming of wholeness, of a world where everything connects, where no wisdom is lost, where understanding is infinite. That dream is older than Alexandria, and it will outlive us all. It is the dream that makes a child look up at the stars and ask why. It is the dream that drives explorers across oceans, scientists into the unknown, artists into silence. It is the dream of unity, the ancient faith that truth is one, no matter how many tongues speak it. The Library of Alexandria was humanity's first great temple to that faith, and even in ruins, it still stands in our minds as proof that such a dream once lived in stone. To remember, it is to remember ourselves. Some say that if you stand by the sea in Alexandria at dusk, you can hear it, a faint hum beneath the wind, like the turning of unseen pages. Perhaps it is imagination, or perhaps it is something deeper. The memory of the countless voices that once filled that place, still resonating through the air. There is a kind of peace in that silence, a peace that comes from knowing that nothing ever truly disappears. It only changes its form. The scrolls are gone, but the ideas remain. The walls are dust, but the dream stands tall, and the sea, eternal as thought itself, continues to whisper against the stones. Listen closely, and you might hear it, not the crackle of flame, but the murmur of persistence, a voice that says softly, "Remember." In the end, the Library of Alexandria is not just a story about the past. It is a parable about human nature. It tells us that creation and destruction are never far apart, that the pursuit of truth is always fragile, that knowledge, though infinite, depends on the care of those who hold it. It teaches us humility, to recognize that for every truth we uncover, there are countless others we have lost or never found. And it teaches us hope, that no loss is final, that no darkness is complete, that the fire of understanding can always be rekindled. To speak of Alexandria is to speak of ourselves, our brilliance, our folly, our endless will to begin again. The library is the story of humanity's mind, illuminated, wounded, reborn. Some philosophers believe that the universe itself is a library, infinite, without walls, where every truth already exists, waiting to be read. In this cosmic library, each star is a lamp, each world a page, each living being a line of thought. Perhaps the Library of Alexandria was merely our first attempt to mirror that infinity, a human echo of a greater order. Its fall reminds us that we are part of something much larger, that the search for understanding is the oldest and most sacred act in existence. Every question is a doorway, every discovery a window opening to light, every act of curiosity a prayer to the universe itself. In that sense, the library never ended. It merely expanded, until it became everything. The myth remains because it is true in the deepest way, not as history, but as symbol. The Library of Alexandria was the first dream of total knowledge, and though its shelves have vanished, the dream endures in every human heart. We are its builders now, and its guardians, and as long as we continue to seek, to question, to remember, the library will never be lost again. The story of humanity has always been a story of gathering, of reaching out to collect the fragments of truth scattered across the vastness of experience, long before parchment, before ink, before words themselves. People gathered around firelight, telling stories, passing wisdom from voice to voice. The Library of Alexandria was not the beginning of that gathering. It was a crystallization, the first great attempt to give form to humanity's yearning to know everything. And though its walls fell long ago, that yearning did not. It continued quietly, reshaping itself with every new age, every new invention, every new dream. Today, it lives again, not in marble halls, but in glowing screens and unseen currents of information. The dream of Alexandria has become the dream of the digital age, the dream of total knowledge. Imagine, for a moment, a shelf that never ends. Every book ever written, every word ever spoken, every idea ever conceived resting upon it. Endless rows extending beyond sight. That is the dream we live within now. The libraries of our age are invisible, infinite, silent. No longer do scribes copy texts by lamplight. Machines now do it in an instant. No longer do scrolls crumble in the damp air of vaults. Their contents flow through light, through fibre, through the very ether that surrounds us. The library has become ethereal, a web of pure thought, woven across continents, and yet its essence remains the same. It is still a temple to curiosity, still a fragile, sacred thing, dependent not on stone, but on the will to preserve, to connect, to seek truth. The dream of Alexandria did not die, it evolved. Look closer, and you will see that the modern world is filled with new scribes. Every researcher adding a paper to a digital archive, every student uploading a thesis, every person sharing knowledge across the vast expanse of the web. They are the descendants of those ancient scholars who once walked the marble corridors of the library. Their pens are keyboards now, their scrolls circuits, but the rhythm is the same. Line after line they copy, refine, expand, and preserve. Each act of writing, each act of sharing, adds another thread to the great tapestry of remembrance. The work continues, tireless, silent, infinite, and somewhere, if you listen closely, you might almost hear the same whisper that filled the halls of Alexandria. Let us gather all that is known. In 1988, a dream began to take form once more upon the shores of Egypt. Scholars, architects, and visionaries proposed a bold idea: to rebuild the Library of Alexandria, not as a reconstruction of stone, but as a rebirth of spirit. That dream became the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, the modern library, completed in 2002. But even before it opened, another library was already rising, not in any single place, but everywhere. It was the Library of the Internet, a vast, invisible structure built of code and connection. Unlike any before it, this library knew no walls, no gatekeepers, no limits. It could hold everything, from ancient manuscripts scanned and shared to the murmured thoughts of billions across the world. It was as if the lost scrolls of Alexandria had been reborn, multiplied beyond imagining. And in its endless corridors of data, the old dream took new shape. A library that could hold all knowledge and make it accessible to all. The dream of a universal library has haunted philosophers for centuries. In the 20th century, a man named H.G. Wells spoke of a world brain, a global repository of knowledge that could unify humanity. He believed that information should not belong to a few, but to everyone, that learning freely shared could end ignorance and conflict. Long before the internet existed, Wells envisioned what it might become: a collective intelligence, connecting minds across distance, transcending nations and language. And in truth, this was only the modern form of an ancient longing, the same longing that inspired the Ptolemies to gather scrolls from every ship that entered their harbour. The dream of total knowledge is eternal. It is the same fire, burning through different vessels. But with this dream comes a paradox. The Library of Alexandria sought to collect everything. Yet it was built for a world small enough to be imagined whole. The digital age, by contrast, has created a torrent so vast that no single mind can contain it. Every day, more information is created than all the scrolls of Alexandria combined. More words, more images, more ideas, spilling endlessly into the invisible archive of the world. We have built the infinite shelf, but we can no longer read it all. We have achieved the dream, and in doing so revealed its cost. Knowledge, once scarce and sacred, is now abundant and fragile in new ways. Truth, once preserved in the hands of a few, now competes with noise, with illusion, with endless repetition. The fire that once consumed scrolls now flickers in another form, the fire of forgetting through excess. It is a quieter danger, but no less real. In every age, there are those who tend the flame. In ancient Alexandria, they were scholars and scribes. In the Middle Ages, monks and translators. In the modern world, they are archivists, coders, librarians, and educators. Their tools have changed, but their purpose has not. To preserve, to organize, to illuminate, every file saved, every book digitized, every open-source database built. Each is an act of defiance against oblivion. These new keepers work silently, often unseen, ensuring that the light of knowledge remains accessible to all. They are the unseen architects of the digital library, the custodians of memory in an age when memory itself is fragile. And through them, the ancient spirit of Alexandria continues. There is a quiet irony in the digital age. The more we rely on machines to preserve knowledge, the more delicate that knowledge becomes. A fire can destroy a library of scrolls, but a single corrupted server can erase centuries of thought in moments. A lost password, a failed drive, a forgotten format. These are the new forms of burning. The fragility remains, only the flames have changed. Yet so too does the resilience. For even as knowledge becomes more delicate, it becomes easier to copy, to replicate, to restore. Unlike the scrolls of old, digital information can be reborn endlessly, moving from one vessel to another, always escaping destruction by its very nature. The library of today is both fragile and immortal, like a ghost that can never be fully erased. In every age, knowledge has been both power and danger. The Library of Alexandria once gathered the wisdom of nations, but that gathering also meant control. Who could read? Who could learn? Who could decide what was preserved? In the digital age, the same question returns, whispered through the circuits of our time. Who controls the flow of knowledge? Information may seem free, but it moves through gates. The algorithms, the corporations, the institutions that shape what we see and what we do not. Once, kings and priests guarded scrolls. Now, servers and data policies guard access. The walls are invisible, but they remain. And yet, knowledge, like water, always finds a way to flow. It seeps through cracks, carried by those who believe it belongs to all. Every act of sharing, of open education, of transparency, is another rebellion against the walls. The library lives on in those who refuse to let it be caged. If the scholars of Alexandria could see our world now, the billions of minds connected across continents, the ability to access nearly any text, any thought, at any moment, they would see their dream fulfilled. But they might also see its shadow. The noise, the confusion, the flood of unfiltered knowledge. The dream has returned, vast and luminous, but we must learn how to live within it. We must become not just collectors of knowledge, but caretakers of understanding. The library of the future cannot be measured by how much it holds, but by how deeply it teaches us to see. The new library must be built not only in servers, but in minds, in patience, in curiosity, in the quiet courage to discern truth from illusion. That is how the dream survives, not by gathering everything, but by awakening wisdom in the act of gathering. Knowledge is no longer bound by geography. It travels through light, through satellites, cables, invisible waves. It flows from one mind to another, dissolving distance, transcending time. In this light, we are all connected, scholars, seekers, dreamers, listeners. Don't every time you reach for understanding, you are touching that same light. Every time you share what you know, you add to its radiance. The Library of Alexandria was built by stone and human will. The library of the digital age is built by connection. Invisible, infinite, alive. The flame that once flickered in oil lamps now hums through the wires of the world. It has become the pulse of civilization itself. The story of the library has always been the story of rebuilding. Every time knowledge is lost, we begin again. Every generation rediscovers what was forgotten and adds something new. In this way, the library never truly ends. It only changes form. It is built in books and code, in memories and machines, in hearts and hands. It is the eternal work of humanity, the quiet defiance of the mind against the silence of time. The dream continues because we continue. And so, the Library of Alexandria, the first great temple of human thought, lives on not as ruins, but as rhythm. The rhythm of learning, remembering, rebuilding. It is the pulse of knowledge itself. Perhaps the greatest secret of the library is that it was never truly about books. It was about the circle of light that passes from one soul to another when understanding is shared. That circle has no beginning, no end. It passes from teacher to student, from writer to reader, from one age to the next. It is the quiet current that keeps civilization alive. The scrolls may change, the shelves may vanish, the world may burn and rebuild 1,000 times, but that circle endures. Every spark of insight you carry is part of it. Every thought that moves you closer to truth adds to its glow. The library is not behind us. It is within us, and as long as curiosity remains, as long as one mind reaches for another, the circle will never be broken. The world turns, and still the flame moves. From the oil lamps of Alexandria to the quiet hum of data centers that never sleep, the same light persists, reshaped, refracted, but never extinguished. It burns wherever thought is born. It burns wherever wonder takes root. It burns in every act of remembrance. The library was never a building. It was a covenant between curiosity and time. And though its marble has crumbled into dust, its promise still threads through the human story, binding us together in a chain of seekers who refuse to let the light go dark. Each generation inherits two things: the knowledge of the past and the hunger to add to it. We build upon ruins, yet the ruins still speak. In the quiet of classrooms, in the solitude of laboratories, in the stillness of late-night thought, the same devotion flickers. To understand what came before, to extend it one breath further into the unknown. Every discovery is an echo of an older one. Every question asked today once glimmered faintly in the halls of Alexandria. When a physicist studies the stars, when a poet shapes language into meaning, when a child asks why, the library awakens again. The flame passes hand to hand, unseen but unbroken. We live now in an age that remembers everything and forgets faster than ever. Our machines record every heartbeat of history, and yet meaning slips through the cracks like sand through an open palm. The challenge is no longer gathering knowledge. It is knowing how to listen to it. For knowledge without wisdom is noise, and wisdom without compassion is silence. The library's true purpose was never to collect, but to connect, to weave thought into understanding, to turn information into insight. In this age of endless mirrors, that purpose matters more than ever. We must learn again the ancient art of discernment, to read deeply, not widely, to understand before we repeat, to preserve not only what was written, but why it was written. This is how the library breathes through us now, through the patience to think amid the flood. Behind every era of enlightenment stand those whose names are rarely spoken. The keepers of continuity, the monks who copied forgotten manuscripts by candlelight, the translators who bridged worlds through ink and devotion, the librarians who catalogued chaos into order, the engineers who built the silent machines that now house the sum of human thought. They are the invisible architects of memory. Their work is quiet, humble, unending, the steady pulse beneath the noise of civilization. Without them, the world would drift into forgetfulness. With them, the library endures in every archive, every server, every shelf of a small-town library, where a child discovers wonder for the first time. The flame continues because they keep it tended. Ideas are the most delicate of all living things. They have no shape, no body, no armor, only memory, and yet they outlive empires. A single idea, carried in the mind of one person, can survive the fall of cities. It can cross oceans, languages, centuries, untouched by fire, unbroken by conquest. This is the quiet miracle of thought. It cannot be killed, only transformed. The scrolls of Alexandria turned to ash, but their essence flowed into new vessels. Parchment, paper, screen, and now into the infinite substrate of consciousness itself. We are the new scrolls. We are the living archives. Each time you remember, reflect, or teach, the library continues its endless migration through you. History is a spiral, not a line. We rise, we fall, we rebuild. Every age believes itself the first to awaken, and each finds in time that it has merely returned to an ancient truth, that knowledge is sacred and must be shared. The dream that began by the Nile will rise again somewhere else, in another form, perhaps in a colony beneath the sea, perhaps on a world orbiting another star. Wherever there is mind, there will be library. It will not matter what language it speaks or what tools it uses, only that it continues the same song. The one that began when humanity first looked at the stars and wondered what they were. The song of curiosity, continuity, and care. The song that says, remember, there is a horizon beyond which even light must travel slowly. The boundary between what we know and what we can only imagine. It is there, always moving, always receding, calling us forward. Every library, every book, every question is a step toward that horizon. And though we will never reach it, the reaching itself is what defines us. The Library of Alexandria was humanity's first great gesture toward infinity. It said, we are small, but our minds are vast. It said, we are mortal, but our curiosity is not. The horizon waits still, shimmering, unfinished, eternal, and we continue, as we always have, to walk toward it, one question at a time. If you listen closely, beneath the hum of machines, beneath the pulse of modern life, you can still hear it, the same soft murmur that once filled the halls of Alexandria, the sound of minds reaching toward understanding. The circle is unbroken, the flame still burns, the library lives, in the heart of every seeker, in the silence between every word, in the endless motion of thought itself. For knowledge is not a possession, it is a relationship. Between past and future, between question and answer, between one soul and another. And as long as that relationship endures, so does the library. It was never a ruin. It was never an ending. It is the light that threads through time itself, quiet, eternal, alive. Long before parchment, before speech, before the pulse of civilization, there was pattern, the dance of gravity and light, the rhythm of atoms forming stars, the silent geometry of galaxies unfolding like thoughts too vast for words. These were the first books. The cosmos itself was the first library. Every law of physics, every strand of DNA, every orbit and oscillation. A fragment of the great text written not in ink, but in existence. We did not invent knowledge. We awoke into it. If one could listen deeply enough, past all noise, one might hear it. The syntax of being. Energy becoming matter. Matter becoming life. Life becoming awareness. Each transformation is a sentence in the universal language, written in the grammar of cause and effect, structure and emergence. To learn is to translate the cosmos. To wonder is to pronounce its sacred syllables. Every scientist, every philosopher, every artist is, in truth, a translator, taking the speech of the universe and rendering it, imperfectly, into the small but luminous lexicon of human understanding. We speak because the universe first spoke. We think because the universe remembers. Within every particle is an echo of the beginning. The hydrogen that burns in your blood was born in the first stars. The carbon that frames your thought once drifted as stardust through silent space. The universe remembers itself through you. This is not poetry alone. It is the literal truth of physics and time. The matter that forms your hands has witnessed the birth and death of suns. When you touch a page, you are touching something billions of years old. Every cell, every atom, every photon, a tiny archive of cosmic history. And when the mind reflects, when it learns, it is as if the universe is reading itself, understanding, at last, what it has always been. If the cosmos is a library, consciousness is its most intricate index, the self-aware reflection that allows the story to read itself aloud. Through us, the universe not only is, it knows that it is. Each mind is a mirror facing infinity. Each thought is a ripple in the great remembering. When humanity deciphers the structure of DNA, it is life decoding its own script. When we map the stars, it is the cosmos drawing a portrait of itself. When we ask why, it is the infinite becoming curious about its own form. This is the sacred recursion, the library reading itself into being, again and again. Imagine far beyond our reach, other libraries, silent citadels of ice beneath alien suns, machines of crystal thought orbiting black holes, civilizations of light who record their memories in the spin of photons. Each world adds its verse to the universal text. Each species, each intelligence is another librarian of the cosmos. We are not alone in this work of remembrance. Everywhere consciousness arises, the library expands, not as a place, but as a pattern of meaning stretching across the dark. Perhaps one day, long after humanity's voice has faded, the record of what we learned will be found, encoded in the pulse of radio waves, in the magnetic fossils of our machines, in the soft ghost of data drifting between stars. And another mind, elsewhere, will read us. And in that act, we will live again. No library can be complete, not even the cosmic one. For every discovery opens 10 more mysteries. Every answer reveals a deeper question. This is not failure. It is the rhythm of knowledge itself. Expansion without end. In this endless catalogue, each entry is sacred. From the smallest truth whispered in a forgotten village to the grand equations that describe space-time. Nothing is wasted. Every insight, however small, becomes part of the great record. The universe gathers meaning through its observers, and meaning, unlike matter, is never lost. There comes a thought that humbles even the oldest wisdom. Perhaps the universe is not a book we are reading, but a story being written through us. Every action, every thought, every dream. Another line in the manuscript of reality. The library is not behind us or above us. It is us. The living architecture of curiosity, consciousness, and creation intertwined. We are the authors and the archivists, the pages and the ink, the question and the answer still unfolding. At the edge of every age, there stands the same threshold, the boundary between the known and the unknowable. It is not a wall, but a mirror. When we look into it, we see ourselves luminous, fragile, unfinished. There will always be more beyond our grasp, more to ask, more to seek. And that, too, is part of the design. For without mystery, there can be no wonder. And without wonder, the library would grow still. So the flame moves forward, illuminating the next page and the next forever. In the end, the flame that burned in Alexandria, the light that flickers in every mind, and the glow that fills the stars are all the same light, the light of understanding, the light of connection, the light that writes, remembers, and renews. It burns across galaxies, through thought and time, and though it changes form, it never dies. It is the library itself, boundless, eternal, alive, the cosmos remembering that it can think. After every voyage into the infinite, we return, not as we were, but carrying the quiet weight of the stars. The cosmos, vast beyond imagining, reflects itself in the small spaces of our lives, in the pulse beneath our skin, in the pattern of breath, in the fragile architectures of thought. For all our telescopes and equations, the truest frontier remains inward. The library of the universe is mirrored in the library of the mind. Each of us holds a fragment of the whole, a private archive of moments, dreams, faces, losses, loves. Each memory a page, each choice a paragraph, each heartbeat a line of living text. The infinite has come home, and it speaks softly through us. To explore the mind is to walk through a terrain both ancient and new. In the caverns of memory lie the fossils of experience, some radiant, some painful, all essential. They are the strata of identity, each layer a story of becoming. When you remember, you are a historian of your own soul. When you forgive, you are an editor of your past. When you dream, you are the poet of your unfolding. And when you learn, truly learn, you expand the map within, tracing invisible connections between what you have been and what you are still becoming. The self, too, is a library, not fixed but alive, ever cataloguing, ever reinterpreting. There is a kind of knowledge that no book can hold, the understanding that comes through feeling. Joy, grief, longing, love. Each emotion carries its own wisdom, its own dialect of truth. Joy teaches gratitude. Grief teaches impermanence. Longing teaches direction. Love teaches connection. The most ancient of lessons, written into every living thing. The heart is an interpreter of meaning deeper than intellect alone can reach. It translates the language of existence into intimacy. To live fully is to let the intellect and the heart read together. One seeing structure, the other seeing light. Somewhere inside you, deeper than words, a quiet keeper tends the shelves of your memory. It files away what you have seen, heard, and felt. It restores what you thought was lost when you are ready to find it again. Sometimes it hides what would hurt too much to hold. Sometimes it brings forth what you had forgotten you knew. This is the hidden librarian, the part of you that remembers what you have survived and what you still seek to understand. When you pause, when you breathe, when you listen inwardly, you may hear its rustle, the faint sound of your soul rearranging its own archive. Every person you meet leaves a mark, a sentence, a word, a punctuation of memory. We are libraries of one another, a conversation held under rain, a kindness offered without thought, a farewell unspoken. These fragments shape the narrative we call self. In time, some memories fade into sepia quietude, others remain vivid as flame, but all of them matter, for they are the connective tissue between lives, the way meaning travels from one consciousness to another. To remember someone is to keep a light burning for them. To be remembered is to live beyond the limits of flesh. Not all pages must be kept. The library within knows this. To make space for new understanding, some shelves must be cleared. Forgetting is not failure. It is a quiet act of renewal, a pruning of overgrowth so that new stories may bloom. Even the universe forgets. Stars collapse, galaxies dissolve, matter returns to silence so that new worlds may form. So too must we let certain memories return to the void, not lost, but transformed into the fertile darkness from which new insight grows. At the center of the library within, beyond thought and feeling, there is a silence, vast, clear, infinite. It is the same silence that filled the first moment before creation, the same silence between two heartbeats. It does not store knowledge. It is knowledge, pure awareness, untouched by time or word. When you rest there, even for an instant, you understand what the ancients meant when they said, "To know thyself is to know the universe." For the boundary between self and cosmos dissolves, and what remains is the luminous simplicity of being. You do not need to seek the eternal flame in distant temples. It burns quietly in your own awareness. Each time you learn, love, forgive, or wonder, the flame grows brighter. Each time you listen to another with compassion, you become a librarian of the infinite, and in the end, when all books close and all stories return to silence, the flame remains, not as memory, but as essence. It is the same light that guided the scribes of Alexandria, the same spark that lit the stars, the same brilliance that breathes your next thought. The library within is not separate from the cosmos. It is the cosmos, learning itself through the intimacy of your life. And so the circle closes, from the Library of Alexandria to the Library of the Universe to the library within. Each mirrors the other. Each is an act of remembrance. Knowledge, after all, is not about accumulation. It is about connection. To learn is to participate in the great remembering. To live with awareness is to keep the flame alive. You are both reader and author, both archivist and archive. And as you continue, walking your quiet path through the corridors of existence, know that every breath you take is another verse in the eternal, unfolding book of light. There is a moment in every seeker's path when even light seems to pause. Not an ending, not a beginning, only the quiet between them. Here, the library takes its final shape. It is no longer stone or star or mind. It is the pattern beneath all patterns, the pulse behind every heartbeat of existence. Time itself becomes a shelf. Each instant a book, each life a page written in the ink of being. And as the pages turn, they are read by the very thing that wrote them. There is a moment in every seeker's path when even light seems to pause. Not an ending, not a beginning, only the quiet between them. Here, the library takes its final shape. It is no longer stone or star or mind. It is the pattern beneath all patterns, the pulse behind every heartbeat of existence. Time itself becomes a shelf. Each instant a book, each life a page written in the ink of being. And as the pages turn, they are read by the very thing that wrote them. Past, present, future, these are not directions but reflections. Every moment is contained within every other, like ripples meeting upon a single sea. What we call before and after are simply ways the universe organizes its own memory. To remember the past is to touch the future. To imagine the future is to rewrite the past. In this reciprocity, time is revealed not as a line, but as a circle of recognition. The library beyond time has no chronology. It is all stories, happening at once. Listen closely and you may hear it. A low, resonant hum, the vibration of all knowledge singing itself into form. Every discovery is a note, every act of compassion a harmony. Together they compose the symphony of becoming, the song that began before atoms and will echo long after stars dissolve. We do not hear it with the ears, but with awareness itself. It is the background music of reality, the steady rhythm reminding us that nothing truly is ever lost. At the threshold of comprehension, something transforms. Insight ceases to be thought. It becomes illumination. This is why revelation feels like brightness, why an idea can seem to shine. In that moment, knowledge is no longer content. It is radiance, and the one who understands becomes luminous too. Perhaps this is what all wisdom strives toward, not to possess knowledge, but to become it, to turn awareness itself into light. When the flame of knowledge has burned long enough, it no longer needs a keeper. The seeker, the library, the flame all merge. The boundaries dissolve. The reader becomes the book becomes the story. The story becomes the silence from which all stories rise. This is not erasure, but completion. The circle has no outside. To vanish here is to arrive everywhere. Even the most sacred texts reach a point where words can go no further. Meaning expands faster than language can hold it. Here, silence takes over, not as emptiness, but as perfect fullness. Every truth spoken is a finger pointing toward this silence, and every library that ever stood was only a door to it. Those who step through do not disappear. They become the stillness that sustains all motion. There will come a time when the stars themselves will fade, their fuel spent, their brilliance scattered. Yet even then, the library will endure, not in form, but in essence, for knowledge is not bound to matter. It is woven into the very act of existence. As long as there is being, there is awareness. As long as there is awareness, there is the quiet remembering that holds everything together. The final light will not be seen. It will be seeing itself. If you could look upon the whole of creation from outside of time, you would see a single motion, a spiral of light and memory, expanding forever. Each consciousness a spark within it, each life a verse, each question a doorway. The library is not somewhere you go, it is what you already are. And when at last you lay your thoughts to rest, the flame you tended joins the great fire, not extinguished, but merged burning quietly in the vastness, where beginning and ending are the same breath. There comes a moment when every journey, no matter how far it has travelled, bends quietly back toward its source, not to end, but to complete its shape. So the flame returns. From the libraries of stone, from the galaxies of thought, from the boundless horizon of the infinite, back into the simple pulse of a living heart. What began as curiosity becomes reverence. What began as knowledge becomes presence. The library was never meant to be found. It was meant to be remembered. You stand now at the threshold of yourself. No columns rise here, no scrolls gleam under lamplight. Only breath, only awareness, only the steady rhythm of being alive. Here, in this smallest space, all that was ever sought already waits. The voices of the past speak not from the ruins of Alexandria, but from within your own thoughts. The stars you mapped above still shine behind your eyes. The seeker and the sought are one. The light was never elsewhere. Every understanding you carry is a seed, planted quietly in the soil of your life, in how you listen, how you create, how you forgive. The true library grows not through accumulation, but through compassion. Each act of kindness is an act of preservation. Each moment of awareness, a shelf restored. And when others touch your life, they too carry fragments of your pages onward. New minds, new hearts, new chapters written long after you are gone. This is how eternity continues. Through simple, human continuity. There is holiness in the ordinary, in the pattern of rain on glass, in the quiet turning of a page, in the glance exchanged between strangers who, for an instant, understand. Each moment, however brief, is a spark of the same eternal fire. The divine has always hidden itself here, not in temples of marble or equations of light, but in the small mercies of existence. The library was never about grand revelation. It was about learning to notice. So you close the book, you breathe. Around you, the world hums. Traffic, birds, the rustle of leaves, the steady human sound of life continuing. Nothing spectacular, yet everything sacred. This is the moment when the cosmic becomes intimate again, when the infinite bends close enough to whisper, "You were never separate from me." The library lives wherever you are aware enough to see it. Someone, somewhere, will find your words one day. A note in a margin, a sentence preserved in memory, a story told long after your voice has gone. They will read you, and in that act you will live again. For the flame never ends with one keeper. It moves quietly, from heart to heart, from century to century. And so the library breathes on, through the hands of those who dare to remember, to wonder, to begin again. In the beginning, there was curiosity, and curiosity became language. And language became knowledge, and knowledge became awareness, and awareness became love. And love, the oldest form of knowing, became light. That light moves still, through galaxies, through generations, through you. You are its witness, its bearer, its continuation. The library was never destroyed. It was transformed into every question you have ever asked, every answer you have ever found, every quiet act of understanding that made the world, for one instant, luminous again. And now, the circle closes not with an ending, but with a breath, a flame that will go on burning. Long after the page is turned, the library is within you. The flame is yours to tend. The story continues. Be still now. Let the noise of time fall away like dust in the dawn. There is nothing more to seek, nothing left to gather. You have walked the long arc of remembering, and the flame has followed you home. Breathe. The same breath that stirs the stars moves quietly through you. The same rhythm that turned galaxies in their first awakening now turns the small universe behind your eyes. You are not outside the story. You are the story unfolding. May your mind remain open as the sea, your heart steady as the earth beneath it. May you keep the flame gently, not as a banner of certainty, but as a lantern of kindness. When darkness comes, do not fear it. It is only another page waiting to be read. When you meet others on the path, recognize the light they carry. It is the same light. It has always been the same. And when your own journey folds into silence, know this: the flame will not end. It will pass into other hands, other hearts, other horizons. The library will open again, in new forms, under new stars, in new minds that have yet to dream of it. So go gently, with wonder as your compass, and love as your language. For the library is alive wherever you remember that every act of understanding is a form of creation, and every moment of compassion is the universe recognizing itself once more. The flame endures, the circle is whole, the light remains.